Okay, here we are back. I have my content that I pasted in, or paste special. Now you'll notice here that in my tab you see Untitled 1. We need to go ahead and save that. And it's important to save that often. You can even save it right away when you open this up. So I'll go to File in my main menu and I'll click Save. And you'll notice here that it actually has a little button down here for site root. We want to make sure that we're in the site root. I can tell I'm in my site root already because I've defined that. But let's go to site root, making sure that that's selected to my site root, the initial folder that I pointed to initially. Now you don't want to save inside your assets folder. This one's going to be our home page, so you know that our home page needs to be named index. And again, I find that using all lower caps is the best. You don't want to save your files with anything else. You need to review the best practices for naming your files. You want to make sure you don't use any special characters or any spaces or anything like that. I'll go ahead and click Save. And now you'll see that my index is named up here. Now one thing that I talked about too, or if you read up in any of the things that I've, or the information that I've provided, you'll see that in title here, it says untitled document. That has nothing to do with the title of the document. It has everything to do with the browser tab. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but it's important to add a title there. Again, this is what you'll see, or your users will see when they visit your site to your home page on the browser tab. Right here, if I click in the title, you'll see that in properties it shows here that I have a title and untitled document at the very bottom. So what I could do there is I can actually name that now, and I can name that Alex's Top 5. I can go on and say artists, or I could just leave it at Top 5. It's up to you. And I'll hit enter. Now you'll see that that's named my title there to Alex's Top 5. Going through this document as well, you'll see that I pasted in a formatted document, which actually translated really good to bringing in some of the tags that we use here. You'll be happy to learn that the H1 or heading 1 is the same here. So the H1 tag is actually a heading 1, so that means your main title. It's very important in every one of your pages to have at least one H1. When people do a search for your web page or website, typically what comes up is anything that is in the H1. That's really kind of an SEO, or the way that the search optimization works for the web. So you want to make sure that you always have an H1. And it's always good to have formatting as well for accessibility purposes. For people that may need to be using a screen reader or things like that, they know exactly what they're clicking on. This is a list, and you can see here that the UL, or unordered list, is up here. Same as in your insert tab up here. So if I click here and I go to H1, that applies it there. Another thing I want to point out is in your properties. In your properties, you can always see what formatting is applied to wherever you may be at in your document. For instance, the formatting for down here under the HTML in properties is H1, and that's heading 1. So I can go through, and if I wanted to change that, I could change it here, H2. Let's bring it back. We definitely want that to be H1. And you can see that if I kind of go through, you'll see I have formatting of paragraph here. This is paragraphs. And I can go in and clean this up a little bit as well. Looks like I need a space there. And maybe there's some spacing that needed to go down here as well. So you can go through and kind of clean things up. My sources at the bottom. and everything's looking good, I want to go ahead and file a save that. And so those are things I wanted to point out here. And we really, it's kind of bland right now. We don't have any coloring. This is really mainly what you need to do is copy and paste your information, but we want to add a little bit more to this by adding some kind of formatting in the CSS. In other words, we want to add some nice, maybe a container around this so that it'll center when you preview it. And let's go into that right now. I'm going to go ahead and preview this, and you can preview it by clicking on this little button down here for preview in browser. Now, if you went over through preferences, you can add some browsers in here. If those are not listed, I think it's better to have more than one browser to review it in. Right now you can see that, I'm going to move that up, that I've only got the two. I've got Google Chrome and Safari. We could always edit the list by going here. That should open the preferences up for you, which can also be found, I'll close that up, under Dreamweaver on a Mac, Dreamweaver and Preferences, or under File and Preferences on a PC. And if you go over to real-time preview, you'll see that you can see my list here. And I can always edit that, add some. So if I had another browser, I could definitely add that. You can also assign what you want your primary browser to be. So my primary browser should be this one, and then Safari could be my secondary browser. It'll tell you that you've got some shortcuts there as well. So I'll go ahead and apply that, and then I'll close that. So let's preview this in a browser, and I'll go to Google Chrome, and you'll see that here is my tab information. That's the document title in HTML, and then you've got your content here, which is just what it is here. It's very responsive. If you make this browser larger, it's going to respond to that. But we want to maybe add a little bit more to this assignment just by maybe adding some spacing on the left and right of this. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down. And in the next video, I'll show you how to do that, exactly that. I'll add some spacing here, a little bit of color, and then we'll be done with this assignment.